She was blind, but claimed to see the future. She lived in a quiet, remote village, yet knew things no one could explain. Names, dates, disasters. Some say she predicted the rise of world leaders, the fall of empires, even 9/11. Her followers called her a prophet, an almost god among men. Her skeptics called her a fraud. But one thing is certain, her visions haven't stopped making headlines, even decades after her death. Born in the shadows of the Balkan Mountains, Baba Vanga was no ordinary woman. Known as the Balkan Nostrodamus, she captured the imaginations and fears of millions, with her chillingly accurate prophecies and cryptic visions. From world leaders to ordinary villagers, people journeyed across continents to hear what the mysterious seer had to say about their lives, their destinies, and even the fate of the world. Despite being blind from a young age, Baba Vanga described seeing vivid images of the future. Wars, natural disasters, political upheaval, long before they happened. And with a reported accuracy of 85%. Who was this mysterious woman? What was it about her that had people all over the world flocking to her for help? And why do her visions still haunt us decades after her death? I'm Brooke, and today we'll be discussing the extraordinary life of Baba Vanga. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Armchair Investigator. Baba Vanga. Vanga's journey to becoming one of the most famous mystics in history began in the small village of Strumica on January 31st, 1911. Born to Pando and Preskova Surcheva, Vanga grew up in a typical lower-class family and was raised in the traditional Orthodox faith. It seemed like from the beginning the oracle's life was destined for hardship. Not only was she born prematurely, she was much smaller and weaker than the average newborn. Doctors warned that she wouldn't survive.
Когато обаче се ражда Ванга, тя е недоносена, не се знае дали ще оцелее. Бабите завиват в едно волско шкембе. Виж как са знаели пък те какво да правят. И до печката да стои на топло.
To dampen the grief and pain from the inevitable death of their daughter, her parents held off on naming her. Yet, night after night, she held on. It wasn't until 2 months after she was born that Pando and Preskova named their firstborn daughter. They settled on Vangelia, a name that meant bearer of good news. Despite being born prematurely, Vanga grew into a healthy and vibrant child. But life had other plans in store for her. At the age of 3, her mother died. Then, a year later, World War I began. And with that, any dreams of an innocent, carefree childhood were shattered. With the onset of World War I, Vanga's father Pando was sent to fight on the Serbian battlefronts, leaving Vanga and her younger brother Vasil in the care of a neighbor. After more than 2 years of fighting, Pando returned home in the fall of 1918 and were married soon after. Sadly, their family would continue to grapple with extreme poverty for years. To make matters worse, Vanga's relationship with her stepmother Tanka was strained. Tanka wasn't loving and caring with Vanga and Vasil like she was with her own children, viewing them as little more than helping hands. But true to her name, Vanga found ways to brighten the lives of those around her. She was smart, creative, and had a sense of humor. Those who knew her during childhood said she was always like a mother hen, caring for and nurturing anyone she crossed paths with. It was around the age of 6 or 7 when she began playing a strange game. Vanga would hide random items around the house and then have to find them while blindfolded. It wasn't long after that she began wearing the blindfold while playing with others. Childhood friends remembered playing doctor with Vanga, where she was oftentimes blindfolded and creating herbal remedies to treat her quote-unquote patients. It's almost like even back then she already knew her fate. In the summer of 1923, the Surchevas moved to Novo Selo with hopes of a fresh start. But they wouldn't even finish unpacking before tragedy struck again. The day started off just like any other. 12-year-old Vanga and her cousins were headed home after grazing their donkey in a nearby pasture. That's when the sky began to darken and churn. As the tornado touched down, her cousins took shelter in a nearby storm cellar. But Vanga didn't make it in time. The powerful winds had swept her up inside its vortex. And when the sky cleared, Vanga was nowhere to be found. Now, reports differ as to how long Vanga was missing. Some say a few hours, while others say several days. But one thing was clear: the young girl was badly injured, and her life would be changed forever. Vanga was found in a field bruised and battered, and her eyes were caked shut with dirt and debris. She was carried home and cleaned up, but it soon became obvious that her eyes were badly wounded. Not long after, infection set in. For weeks, Vanga was in pain and unable to open her eyes. Despite doing everything he could to raise funds to get his daughter help, Vanga's father was only able to raise enough money for a partial operation. And while it gave Vanga the ability to open and close her eyes without pain, her vision steadily declined. Everyone chalked the tornado up to a horrible natural disaster, but Vanga was convinced it was no accident, believing that she was meant to lose her vision in order to gain other abilities, like the power of clairvoyance. In 1925, 2 years before she completely lost her vision, 14-year-old Vanga was sent to the House of the Blind in Zemun. And this is where she thrived. She was groomed, fed, taken care of, and taught new skills, all with an abundance of patience from the staff. Vanga also received an education. While there, she learned grammar, math, vocabulary, and Braille. She was even taught how to play piano, knit, and cook. It was there that she met her first love, another visually impaired student named Dimitar. In the spring of 1928, he proposed. Vanga's father, however, had different plans. Not only did he forbid his daughter from marrying Dimitar, he demanded that she come home at once. Vanga's stepmother Tanka had died while giving birth, and as the eldest daughter, it was now her responsibility to look after her 3 younger siblings and take care of the house. She did as she was told. This is when 18-year-old Vanga drastically changed. She was no longer interested in the things that once brought her joy. She stopped caring about her appearance and began wearing tattered old dresses, something she didn't necessarily have to do since she was making and selling clothing as a way to earn money. Not only that, she began speaking and acting like a child. In 1939, at 28 years old, she contracted pleurisy, a condition that causes inflammation in the lining of the lungs. Doctors said things didn't look good and recommended that she get her affairs in order. Again, Vanga defied all odds and pulled through. That's when her powers began to manifest themselves. Now, Vanga said she had actually received her first vision years ago, right after the tornado while she was lying in the field waiting for help. She heard a voice tell her that she now had the gift of healing and second sight. At the time, Vanga chalked it up as all in her head due to the trauma she had just experienced. But looking back, she believed that a voice really had spoken to her that day in the field. She acquired her gifts during that incident, and now at 28, she believed that having a near-death experience had essentially opened the floodgates for her abilities. She began having strangely vivid dreams and heard voices at all hours of the day, even when she was wide awake. And the voices seemed to come from everything: plants, random objects, and even the walls. Not only that, she began seeing ghosts, and not just shadows. These were fully formed, clearly defined figures that she could see in detail. This is also when she began having visions about the future. Visions that, for the most part, came without warning. She described it like seeing short clips that played in her mind, showing her flashes of major events that would happen in the future. Occasionally, an invisible entity would help add context to what she was seeing, but for the most part, she was left to figure things out on her own. She would go on to call these entities her spirit guides, beings that existed beyond the physical realm and acted as intermediaries between humans and the divine. Vanga's gifts didn't stop there. She discovered that she could read people and literally see what was in store for them. Incredibly, she could see a person's entire life play out, starting from the day they were born till they took their last breath. It all played out like a movie in her mind. Spirits even used her body as a vessel to speak through her, passing along warnings about future events. Naturally, this was a lot to take in. Vanga made the decision to keep her gifts a closely guarded secret, fearing that others would think she was crazy. After a year, however, she slowly began opening up to her family and friends about her abilities. First, she began telling them about the ghosts she was seeing, then the voices. Finally, she told them about her visions and healing touch. And while sure they were initially skeptics, their disbelief quickly faded when Vanga's eerily accurate predictions began coming true. Her loved ones were absolutely blown away. They wanted Vanga to share her gifts with the world, but Vanga was adamant. She didn't want the unwelcome attention that was sure to come her way. As far as she was concerned, her abilities would remain known to only a few. That is, until she began receiving a terrifying revelation in the spring of 1940. Vanga had received a vision she couldn't ignore. World War II would soon begin, and it would be deadlier than the previous one. Not only that, her beloved country would also be entering it. At the next village gathering, Vanga sounded the alarm. Reports say that she went into a trance and the voice of a man spoke through her. His message was clear. War and carnage were coming. The message spread throughout the nearby towns like wildfire. Then, in March of 1941, Yugoslavia and Bulgaria officially entered the war, and Vanga's prophecies she had made a year prior were ringing in everyone's mind. She had been right. Word about the blind seer continued to grow. Interestingly enough, nobody doubted her abilities. They did, however, argue about where they came from. Some say her powers came from Satan, while others believe she was a divine healer and messenger of God. Travelers showed up every day on her doorstep like clockwork, asking for help with everything from illness to advice and everything in between. They left telling stories about how the clairvoyant healed them, brought them peace, and restored their hope. By the end of 1941, Vanga was not only the village psychic and healer, she was practically considered a god among men, becoming universally known as Baba Vanga. The night before an appointment, visitors were asked to place sugar cubes under their pillows as they slept. Then they were told to bring them the day of their meeting. During the session, Vanga rolled the cubes around in the palm of her hand. It was as if they somehow created a connection between her and her guest. No problem was too big or too small for her. Visitors asked her for help in deciphering their dreams, finding love, test results, career choices, finding lost valuables, missing cattle, getting rid of diseases, and even the status of loved ones who were fighting in the war. Where were they? Were they alive? When were they coming home? Even delivering the bad news, she still provided the gift of closure.
Когато тръгна в партизанската армия, тя му вика, добре си поел пътя, обаче има и предвид, че точно на 23 години теб те очаква куршум и ти внимавай, ако има някаква възможност на рождения си ден да можеш да не бъдеш така в акция, нали? Батко се е случило в този ден да бъда точно да преземеш до някакъв мост там на Гергилия и в този ден точно беше разстрелян.
Just to be in Vanga's presence was an experience all on its own. During trances, her voice dramatically changed, her body twitched, and her eyes darted rapidly back and forth. It was an eerie sight to see. Vanga's ability to heal was equally as impressive as her psychic abilities. She created potions using local herbs and hardly ever prescribed the same remedy twice. Some of her recipes were so unusual that they baffled even the most veteran practitioners.
Не на нощеска, през съна не. И през деня. Ето ги. Отдавна така? Нерви. Лекарите го дават епилепсия ли? И те лекуват за епилепсия? Иш да пушиш цигари? Не. Добре. Да, маленко детенце. Тая болест ки си караш и ки си взимаш хапчета. Тия последните белите хапчета, взимаш ли ги? Кой ти дава?
Лекуващия лекар доктор Христов в Тайпан.
Не е това. Има жена, тук женски лекарства. Жена когато е лекувала?
В Исул, 68 година.
Жена?
Беха много.
Това е жена, ето я женски ръце. От Христов ли взимаш капчета?
Да.
Билче не пиеш. Трябва и да не пиеш.
Да.
Ич. И да пиеш билче не. А хапчета взимай. А как ги взимаш? Не вечери се валя?
Само вечер.
Да, по едно.
Да.
така. И къде има плачено да не ходиш. И къде има много говорне, па да не ходиш. И да одеш повече така пролета на въздуха, взимай си ги тия хапчета и ако те пратят некъде на бани, баните да бидат не бани, но да биде въздух висок. Дори не станат ти 45 години, болестта няма да изчезне. Колко години са?
23.
Vanga often spoke about the connection between all living things, past, present, and future, as if everything existed on a continuum that she could access at will. Her prophecies were rooted in the belief that time wasn't linear but fluid, allowing her to see the events of tomorrow as clearly as the events of today. Vanga believed that the future wasn't set in stone. Events could change through human action, divine will, or unseen forces. People came from far and wide to see the blind mystic, often spending days traveling to meet her. Visitors came from all walks of life. Rich, poor, it didn't matter. And while Vanga never openly asked for compensation, some gave money, others gave food. No one was turned away, not even those who came empty-handed. Some estimate that Vanga had received more than $100 million throughout the course of her life. Vanga's half-sister, Lupka, helped manage her appointments, record sessions and prophecies, and served as a translator when needed. In the spring of 1942, Vanga would begin a new chapter in her life, marriage, something that her family didn't see coming. After all, Vanga was practically married to her work. But all that changed during a reading with a Bulgarian soldier named Dimitar Gustrov. There was an instant connection. Dimitar immediately left his then-wife, and less than 2 weeks after meeting, Vanga and her sister moved in with him and his family. Then, on May 10th, the couple formally exchanged vows. Vanga was never able to have children. Some argued it was due to her powers, while others believed that it could have stemmed from years of malnourishment and illness that began during World War I. She would end up adopting 2 children, a boy named Dimitar, who was orphaned a few months after his birth, and a 6-year-old girl named Violetta, who had lost both her parents. Vanga loved children, and she never denied anyone who asked her to be their child's godmother. At the end of her life, she had over 15,000 godchildren. In 1943, Dimitar was drafted into the Bulgarian army and stationed in northern Greece. And while Vanga saw her husband's safe return, she wasn't prepared for the person he had become. Dimitar returned home a broken man, sick with hepatitis and carrying the mental and physical scars of the war. He would never be the same again. By 1947, he was drinking heavily, something Vanga hated, as she knew it would ultimately cause his death. Here was Vanga, someone who had healed countless people, and yet she was powerless to help her own husband. On April 1st, 1962, after being hospitalized for cirrhosis of the liver, Dimitar passed away. Vanga's sister said that after Dimitar passed, Vanga went into an unwakeable sleep. On the day of his funeral, she finally awoke, telling Lupka, "I accompanied his soul to the place where he belongs. He's at peace." After the death of her husband, Vanga decided it was time for a change. After spending nearly 25 years in Petrich, the sisters moved to Rupete, a village about 7 miles away. See, Rupete was located near an extinct volcano, and Vanga wanted to take advantage of the mountain air, the hot springs, and local herbs, believing that moving to the area would strengthen her powers. It wasn't long before the Bulgarian government took notice. In 1967, the Bulgarian government officially employed Vanga as a civil servant, setting her up with an office at the Institute of Suggestology and Parapsychology in Sofia, the state's capital. They even provided her with a full-time team, including 2 secretaries who helped transcribe sessions and document her prophecies. But how could they use Vanga's powers to their advantage? Well, for starters, they now had complete access to her records, meaning a list of anyone who had gotten readings from her, along with a transcript of their meeting. A list that included foreign leaders, high-ranking personnel, and politicians. They even commissioned a team spearheaded by Dr. George Lazanov to research the science behind Vanga's abilities.
И като такъв беше изследвана, макар и че ние не успяхме това изследване да го проведем до край, не успяхме маса от нашите замисли да осъществим. Както можахме да направим, то е при 6-7 хиляди лица, направихме анкетни проучвания за това доколко тя е познала миналото, настоящето и бъдещето тях. И тук трябва да кажем, че тези 7000 изследвания в процент над 70 на 100 съобщават, че Ванга им е познала. Този факт сам по себе си поставя въпроса: не трябва ли все пак този феномен да бъде изследван? Трябва да го оставим за обект на мистиката или за обект на всякакви други тълкования? Разбира се, че не. И върх с това ние направихме допълнителни анкетни проучвания. Опитахме да направим и апаратурни записи. Но тук започна и нашата трагедия. Надигна се голяма дискусия, като надхвърли рамките на обикновената научна дискусия. Създаде се абсолютно неподходяща атмосфера за всякакво научно изследване. И ние прекратихме вече 5 години.
In a 2007 interview, he recalled his first encounter with the mystic, saying, "I decided to make sure that Vanga was really a fortune teller. So, one day, my friend Sasho, his wife, and I drove to see her. She first told Sasho's fortune. She said, 'Oh, you are unfortunate, but don't give up. Your mother has been in a psychiatric center all of her life.' That was true. His mother, who suffered from schizophrenia, was in the psychiatry hospital in Karlikovo. After Sasho's turn, Vanga prophesied to his wife. Vanga told her, 'For 10 years, you haven't been able to have children, but you will have one next year.' And indeed, a year later, she gave birth to a girl. My turn came. 'George, you are going to make a study of me, aren't you?' She worded it very precisely. 'Yes, I'm going to make a study of you, Vanga,' I said. And she replied, 'Remember that you have promised me that.' Some years before that, I had searched for and examined 49 fortune tellers all over Bulgaria. And I had cycled all over the country in order to investigate those fortune tellers. But none were as good as Vanga. For reasons unknown, Dr. Lazanov wouldn't be able to finish his study on Vanga. The full backing of the government only boosted Vanga's notoriety and credibility. But now that she had worked for the state, they were the ones calling the shots. Readings with Vanga were no longer payment negotiable. Locals now paid $17 for a session, while out-of-towners paid $87, with the profits being split 3 ways. Some of it funded Vanga and her staff, some of it went to overhead costs, and the rest went directly to the city treasury. At this point in Vanga's career, she had a 1-year waiting list for readings, with politicians and celebrities being the only exception for cutting ahead. Due to her high demand, meetings with her were capped to 10-minute sessions. At the height of her career, it was said that she was performing close to 130 readings a day.
Дадехте бре за работа, се продадехте за тия пусти мебели, за тия пусти апартаменти, за тия пусти леки коли. За мене не ми се говори това. Това ми е болно мене. Каже нещо за любов, за душата.
Да направите още веднъж жертва.
За мене ми е болно нещо това, не ми се говори.
Ще си спомните за вашата собствена любов.
Собствената любов. Ти тия баби тук ще знаят. Говори Олга сега.
Аз виждам, че имате добро настроение.
Кой, аз?
Да.
Ами аз идвам от погребение. На 37 години човек погребахме чуден. До там е определен. Аз когато умирах не плачам. Аз си казах преди 15-20 дена думата дойде при мене. Татко му дойде, ма бидех смела пък. Викам, Чичо, преброени са деновете на Петър.
And while Vanga had gained notoriety for her one-on-one sessions, it was her prophecies regarding large-scale future events that cemented her place in history. In early 1963, she foretold that the 35th President of the United States would be the victim of an assassination. Her prophecy came true on November 22nd that year when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. Not long after, she revealed 3 more predictions: the assassination of U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, the electoral victory of Republican presidential candidate Richard Nixon, and the upheaval in the Czechoslovak Socialist Republic. By the 1970s, her reputation had crossed continents. Filmmakers, journalists, reporters, and researchers visited her with hopes of figuring out the source of her abilities. In 1979, she predicted the collapse of the Soviet Union. Not long after, she warned of a horrific nuclear accident that would happen sometime within the next 2 decades, a possible reference to the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. She also predicted that Kursk would be covered in water at the dawn of the 21st century. At the time, her followers believed she was referring to a city in western Russia. Then, on August 12, 2000, the unthinkable happened. The Kursk, one of Russia's largest nuclear submarines, suffered 2 explosions caused by a failed discharge during a routine training exercise. The blast tore apart the hull, which led to its sinking and deaths of the 118 crew members on board. Then, in 1989, Vanga had another massive premonition. Baba Vanga's warning was ominous, with the mystic saying, "Horror, horror. American brothers will fall after being attacked by steel birds. The wolves will be howling in a bush and innocent blood will be gushing." Was she talking about the September 11th terrorist attacks? Her followers sure thought so. As with anyone, Baba Vanga wasn't without her critics. Countless visitors claimed they had received false predictions from her. Then there were those who claimed that Vanga wasn't the sweet, selfless person others claimed she was, with one Rupete resident telling the New York Times, "She just looks at you, asks you what's wrong, and then repeats phrases she has memorized. A lot of what she does is for money, and the way she talks is vulgar. She uses words that no woman should use, especially not a godly person." Others argued about her motives. Some theorized that Vanga was simply a mentally ill woman who inadvertently ended up in the spotlight, while others claimed that she was a business-savvy con artist who duped millions of people. Then there are those who point to her work with the government, believing that her abilities were all just a ruse to boost Bulgarian tourism. Whatever you believe, one thing is certain. Vanga remained committed, providing readings until the day of her death. In her later years, she expressed concern over the way her prophecies were perceived, worried that people were too focused on the sensational aspects rather than the truth they conveyed. Vanga died on August 11, 1996 from breast cancer at the age of 84. She was laid to rest at a church in Rupete, with her home in Petrich later being converted into the Baba Vanga Museum. Even after her death, the psychic's notoriety continued to grow, establishing herself as a giant among mystics. Her prophecies extended far beyond her lifetime, making predictions for centuries to come and charting humanity's course until the year 5079, which she claimed would mark the end of the world. Among Vanga's chilling prophecies are the predictions she made for the year 2025, claiming this year would mark the beginning of global catastrophe, changing life as we know it. She warned that conflict in Europe would have a devastating effect on the population, setting humanity on a path that would lead to our decline and eventual destruction of Earth. And while humanity's demise wouldn't occur until the year 5079, the time between now and then would be filled with disaster upon disaster that pushes civilization to the brink. In 2028, she predicted that humans would begin exploring Venus in search of alternative energy sources, and that by 2033, the polar ice caps would melt, drastically raising sea levels and submerging entire coastal regions, events that will further strain society. Baba Vanga's prophecies didn't just focus on disaster. She made predictions about advancements in science and technology, foretelling the invention of medical treatments that would extend human life. She declared that cancer would be eradicated in the early 21st century, and that the cure-all would be rich in iron. We would also create a drug that would reverse the aging process, and that it would feature hormones from dogs, horses, and turtles, saying, "The horse is strong, the dog is hardy, and the turtle lives for hundreds of years." She predicted that telepathy would be possible in 2025 through the help of technology like brain chips. She predicted that by 2130 we would learn to coexist with aliens, and that they would teach us how to build fully functioning cities underwater. In 2164, scientists will introduce the world's first animal-human hybrid. Here's a list of other prophecies that Vanga has made. Vanga's life and prophecies remain a subject of fascination and awe, even decades after her death. They're intriguing and puzzling, and sometimes completely out of the scope for an elderly woman living in a remote village, like her predictions about brain chips. In a world with so many what-ifs and unanswered questions, Vanga provided comfort, guidance, and reassurance to those who sought her out. Now, I pass the question off to you. Do you believe in Baba Vanga's abilities? Have you ever sought the help of a psychic? If so, what was your experience? If you appreciate today's video, give it a thumbs up, and hey, while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on the next investigation.